The Myth of the Liberal Dove is Dead. Read and written by Daniel Woods. Vice President Kamala Harris's presidential campaign took extreme steps to remove the stain of Palestinian blood from her rebranding and efforts to distance herself from her predecessor on Thursday night. From the hushed atmosphere surrounding the Israeli genocide being funded by the United States Democratic administration, to the use of suspiciously Hasbara-like tactics to smear pro-Palestinian coalition members and their chosen speaker, it was all but impossible to perceive the underlying message as anything other than anti-justice, anti-morality, and anti-freedom for all. I, like so many who joined the uncommitted movement and remained steadfast throughout the transition from a walking corpse to a telegenic right-wing Democrat, offered critical support to the potential change in direction in the earliest days of her candidacy. It seemed at the time that she may be more amenable to the policies that young people, progressive, and union support, that she may be more responsive to pressures from the Democratic base, which has been boiling to a frenzy for the last 10 months. And there was a chance that we were right, her strategic choices in the campaign aligning well with the preferences of the progressive coalition and consistently shocking party loyalists across both sides of the aisle. But after the DNC in Chicago, that's a dead horse. It's been interesting to watch the DNC unravel over the last days, waiting patiently as they espoused unity and independence and opportunity across every screen in the nation, while simultaneously the elephant in the room screamed from every corner of the vast convention grounds. They kept the suspense of the innovativeness of the Harris Walls campaign primed right up to the end, but instead of painting a picture of hope for emancipation of Palestine, we were delivered a guarantee of further jingoism and repression, both at home and abroad. Frankly, we all knew from the moment they started parading cops across the stage, priming their upcoming anti-immigrant push, that our hopes for a pro-peace shift were false. Quote, "Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades," her prepared speech read. Quote, "The Border Patrol endorsed it. As president, I will bring back the bipartisan border bill. I will sign it into law." Unquote. Remember, this bill was an example of the right-wing tendencies of the Democratic Party, their desires to install the same sort of securitarianism as their peers in the Republican Party, a prime showing of how the liberals on either side of the quote-unquote party line will always fall in line with conservatives when threatened with the phantom of war, terrorism, and instability. At their core, these politicians, of whatever ideological stripe, are of the same insipid imperialist species who fear one thing over all else: the visitation of their own horrors upon themselves. The idea that the tactics they use to subjugate poor and brown people across the world will one day come to crush the imperial core. Quote, "Let me be clear. I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself," unquote, Harris emphasized in regard to the genocide in Palestine, cementing the ongoing support of US-backed Israel before repeating mistruths regarding the violence of October 7th. In these regards, she mirrored the steps of her potential predecessor in all ways except for claiming to have seen pictures of beheaded babies for herself. She further set the needle of support for perpetuating the Nakba through the next administration by obscuring the source of the suffering in Gaza, once more attempting to envision 2,000-pound bombs as things which the Israelis simply grow on stolen olive, nut, and fruit trees of Gaza, Sinai, and the West Bank. She referred to the scale of the genocide as quote-unquote heartbreaking, before alleging support for the rights of Palestinians to their quote dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination, unquote. Meanwhile, outside the convention, her surrogates and supporters denied those very things to members of the party who demanded rhetoric transformed to realization. June Rose, the Orthodox Jewish uncommitted delegate from Rhode Island, emphasized this, stating, quote, "We're out here making demands of a party that claims to represent our values of freedom, justice, and equality. But they choose to apply those values to every single issue besides one. When it comes to Gaza, they apply a different set of values. We become the party of death and destruction," unquote. Iran, the truest of enemies of the United States, made an obligatory appearance immediately after in Harris's speech. The promise of the next administration to continue aggrieving the country regardless of who ultimately wins in November. "Our interests in Iran's are opposite," it is assured, "and when it comes to it, the US empire will continue to sanction and subjugate those people in the name of Israeli state colonialism and quote-unquote security." It is no coincidence that the next utterances regarded quote-unquote tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un, who, it must be remembered, is a product of the same imperialist meddling which has created convenient enemies of the likes of Spain, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Honduras, Chile, Sudan, Russia, China, the Philippines, Germany, and Vietnam over our relatively short time in empire building. If we are to understand this parallel at its rawest form, with consideration of the empowerment of US proxy Israel's tyrannical, fascistic Netanyahu, we understand what this means. We won't quote-unquote cozy up to tyrants like Kim Jong-un, who happen to be a response to imperialism rather than an explicit tool in the interests of the West. The Democratic Party, with Harris at the head, has committed to the continuance of bloodshed and brutality across the world, ensuring that despite the cries for peace from every corner of the globe, we will continue our dark march through the crumbling of Western countries at home. The roots of imperialism must be planted deep within the soil from which it grows. The people must water it with not only blood, but must drink its poisonous sap as well. It is impossible to be safe and progressive at home while building the likes of Israel and ISIS abroad. And any hopes for change were extinguished in the final hours of the convention in Chicago. Quote, "Palestine needs our voices," Rose explained. "Not one child anywhere in the world needs to die in order to keep me safe." Thank you so much for listening. It means the world. If you'd like, please take a moment to follow, like, and subscribe on Substack or Instagram. Thank you. Have a nice day.